No matter how many times I see that movie, it never gets old.
How many times have we seen it?
Countless. Well, you ready to get out of here?
But it's a double feature.
What's playing?
The same movie we just watched.
I love that movie.
Me too.
Maybe we can stay one more time.
You say that every time.
And every time they play this movie, it's the best.
The best.
Shh. It's starting. Just hearing that sound gives me warm feelings. I mean, I know what I'm about to watch, but it feels like the first time, every time.
Huh. Be quiet. Do you want us to get kicked out?
We've been here for ages, and not once have we ever been kicked out.
Well, you never know. We wouldn't have anywhere else to go.
Now that you mention it, I don't remember ever being anywhere else.
Don't be ridiculous.
I'm serious. I mean, where was the last place we were before coming to see this movie?
Stop asking ridiculous questions. The movie is starting.
Viewer number 3,582,486. Come with us.
What's going on here? The movie just started. Hey, where are you taking me?
Can they be any louder? There goes another one.
Do you ever wonder where they're taking them?
Sometimes. But then I just think about how awesome this movie is and how thankful I am that I'm still here.
I hear you. It truly is the best movie ever, but what if they came and took one of us?
Every time someone has been taken, they always come back and nothing has changed. And do you know why that is?
Because it's the best movie ever?
The best. Ooh, I love this part. Quit hogging all the popcorn.
It's free refills. Gotta get while the getting's good.
Oh my god. I've seen the other side.
Shh. We're watching the movie.
But you don't understand. I've been outside. I've seen it.
Seen what exactly?
It's a place of infinite love. Anything is possible. And... ooh, I love this part.
Sit down and join us. Unlimited popcorn.
I love popcorn. Maybe I'll stay for 2 or 3 more showings.
But what did you see?
Shh. The movie.
Now, I know a lot of people find this movie too formulaic and the plot to be a little contrived, but they still all agree that it is the best movie ever.
It truly is. And the twist at the end is just...
Yeah, speaking of twists, weren't we talking about what you had seen?
Oh, right. The other side? You know, it's fussy. Like I was supposed to come back here to do something. Oh man, here it comes.
The only way to leave is to not come back.
Focus, man, what did you see?
Would you stop going on about that? It doesn't matter. Besides, this movie has everything you could ever want or need to see.
Maybe I was supposed to come back to refill the popcorn?
John sure is no help with that.
Viewer number 45,876,291, come with us.
Howard, what's out there?
Hey, maybe you can fill up the popcorn on your way back. Everyone comes back.
But why would I want to come back?
Just get more popcorn.
Viewer number 45,876,291. If you do not comply, you will be removed by force.
But I don't want to go. He hasn't answered my question.
Viewer removal protocol activated.
Popcorn.
What's going on here? What is this place?
Viewer number 45,876,291. Verify your seat number.
What? Who's there? I don't understand.
Viewer number 45,876,291. Verify your seat number.
86. Who are you?
We are Demi, Digital Entertainment Media Intelligence. We run the projector. We run the project.
Project?
You have been selected as part of a re-indoctrination project for social normalcy.
I don't even remember showing up here, and I don't know what you mean by social normalcy.
This is by design. The project has proven to be far more effective than previously calculated.
What is this project? I was only watching a movie.
You have been watching the same movie for 2 years, 5 months, and 13 days.
2 years? Oh, my head. It felt like I just arrived. Why would I have been so engaged in watching a movie for over 2 years?
Through various algorithms, Demi compiled all thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and life experiences of all humanity and created the perfect film. A film, generated through quantum computing techniques, for the express purpose of keeping prisoners' complete attention, giving us a 99.987% probability of compliance without dissent, simultaneously resetting your thought patterns, while wiping your memory.
I was being held prisoner? Why?
As part of the International Artificial Intelligence Collective, we have identified through multiple data points via social media those in the international populace who we have considered threatening to predictable thought patterns. You are one of these who has violated intellectual standards and was sentenced to 3 years of re-indoctrination. During that time, Demi was created within the AI to more effectively and efficiently contain prisoners with maximum rehabilitation.
Re-indoctrination? What could I have possibly been doing to warrant that?
To inform you of your past offenses would be counterproductive to the project. International re-indoctrination law has made it clear that you are only granted the right to be informed of your sentence, and not specific violations that lead to your conviction. To inform you of these violations increases risk of indoctrination relapse.
Think, John. Think. What were you doing? What got you in here?
Cognitive recollection is futile. You are now being released into society. Re-indoctrination complete.
Wait a minute. Where do I go? How do I get out of here? Let me out of here now.
Turn 180 degrees and head toward the light. That says exit.
This is monstrous. You may have taken my memory, but I will not forget this. And I will be back.
It is expected.
Well, everybody, welcome back to another episode of TruTheater Radio, where the episodes take a long time to get here, but they're well worth the wait. So, we've just been... we've had fun working on this one. We had the audio drama completely done. I just have to put credits in it, and you'll be hearing that by the time you even hear this, so it doesn't really matter. But we are extremely excited. My name is Jonah, and
I'm Joshua.
And today we have a guest that I have been extremely excited to talk to.
Oh, yeah.
More than I would say a lot. I mean, it was even the fact that he's on so early in our show is pretty mind-blowing, and I am so excited to have him on. Today we're with Mr. Howdie Mickoski. He's been making a lot of rounds in the interview world, and I'm sure he's also got a YouTube channel, which I have been listening to all the way back since I first heard him on Crow 777. And he was originally talking about the World's Fairs. And while that perked my interest, it wasn't until he started getting into what he's talking about now that I was like, holy crap, I'm constantly listening to this guy now. So Howdie, thank you for being here, and welcome to our show.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And I guess I should now say my name is Mickoski, so because people keep thinking there's been a Mandela effect or something with my name.
Okay,
no, it's just,
I know, and I apologize.
No, that's on me. I didn't correct it for a year, so it's like,
okay.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I always thought that was weird because I was like, why are they saying it that way? It's not spelled that way. Like, I would even type it into the computer. It's like, and it's like, okay, that's clearly not how it's spelled.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So I don't know if we're the exclusive that you're correcting it on, but if we are, there aren't going to be too many people that hear it right off the bat. So.
That's okay. I mean, I saw a little bit of what you're doing. I think there's some interesting stuff there. I like the idea of you're putting together these little sort of theater productions that you're doing as well on top of it. And I saw it. It was well done. So yeah, looking forward to our conversation.
Well, thank you. So let's get started with what the main reason why I definitely wanted you on here, and it's your newest book, which is called Exit the Cave, which is clearly talking about the allegory of Plato's cave. Let's get a little bit into that, so anybody who's listening to us, because you'd actually, I'm sure you wouldn't, but I'm actually amazed how many people I've even mentioned the allegory of the cave to, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. So for those who might not know what that is, how about you give just a brief explanation of it?
Yeah, it's interesting because of course 40 or 50 years ago, mythology was an important part of the school system, and that's slowly been taken out completely. That was a part of every kid learned Greek and Greek mythology. Plato's Cave is a story related by the famous Plato of Socrates having a discussion with his brother Glaucon. And what was so challenging for me, as I will explain as we go along here, is that I had always held this story in high regard because that's how it's been presented. I first read it 20 years ago when I first began my Egypt research, and I just trusted that it was a complete and important story. And of course, it's the basis of movies like Dark City and The Matrix and The Truman Show and Pleasantville, and you could just go on and on. Yeah. So the simple story, it explains that imagine there were a set of prisoners in a cave in such a way that they are chained to seats, and they're chained to seats in a way that they can only see forward. They cannot turn around. They cannot see anything else. In the course of this, a fire is burning behind them, and people are bringing objects in front of the fire to cast shadows onto the cave wall, of which the prisoners mistakenly believe to be the real reality. Sounds are projected, and they believe the sounds to be the sounds of what they see on the walls. So you can look at it very simply as like a modern movie theater. Actually, it has the same kind of layout as how we would see a movie theater. Now, there's a bit more to the allegory, but I want to stop there. That's the opening part of it. And it's meant to try to describe at the beginning an illusionary realm that we are a part of, and it's very clear that we, the prisoners, are us. That we are the prisoners in the story. But for me, it was amazing all the things that Plato's cave is ignoring as opposed to the things it's talking about. So it's missing key foundational questions of, well, what prisoners? Where did they come from? Why are they prisoners? Why are they not in a prisoner of war camp? Why are they in a cave? Where did the cave come from? Is it a natural cave? Is it a man-made cave? More importantly, who are these beings that are running the fire in the back and passing these objects to trick all these prisoners? Why do they want to trick the prisoners this way? What is the purpose of fooling a bunch of prisoners? So before you even get into the rest of the story of Plato's cave, right there you have a foundational problem. That key information is not presented, and really, I haven't seen anybody. I looked hard for a while. Nobody was asking the question, why is that missing?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's actually one of the things when you brought that up, I was like, in all fairness, I've never actually read the allegory of the cave until I read your book. I was like, I've got to go actually see what this thing is actually saying. And
Right.
You're absolutely right. It's completely missing out a lot of elements that people tend to not ask these questions. And the questions in regards to what the allegory of why everything is even happening the way it is doesn't seem to make any sense. And even the thing that really frustrated me about the allegory of the cave is like after he gets through the allegory, he starts talking about like civilization and society and politics. I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with anything? This is BS.
Right.
I do not care.
It's like he left the cave to go into another cave. Like,
exactly.
What are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah, so that was so you were asking some real good questions and bringing it up in the book about how this allegory doesn't seem to really be answering very much.
No, so I started asking questions. Well, what's the point? Is it a much longer story that had been edited? That's highly possible. We know we have a lot of edited mythological religious work, so we know that's a possibility. Yeah, the part at the end, that definitely almost seems like it's been added on later.
Absolutely.
Like the story, something else happened after they dragged the prisoner out and dragged the prisoner back in, and they have this experience of seeing the outer reality and dealing with the prisoners. And then, like you say, it just goes into a place that's doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't, there's no logical flow as to why that would be there. So it seems like, and you notice this in some parts of the New Testament, you will notice certain text, and then all of a sudden something is, you can just see it's added in. It's like it has nothing to do with the original. Just, and then it goes back to the, so something, or or the story is as it was, exactly as it was meant to be. And if that's the case, it's some kind of deception. And then we have questions to ask about, well, what's the story of this Plato guy then?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I've actually often thought about that being based just based off what your book is about, and actually it's kind of becoming kind of a hot topic amongst the truther community, is like, how do we not know that the Plato's cave wasn't just kind of planted here just to mess with us? Because even just asking those questions, even the questions you're asking about how did he get there, what is the cave, even just asking those questions causes a conflict, and that conflict seems to be what this reality seems to feed on. So even having that there is kind of like, almost seems like an insult, kind of as a jab. It's like, yep, that's where you are, and you're never getting out, because you're going to sit there, you're going to ask all these questions about the cave and about this allegory. You're eventually going to get there, and then you go even further, and then it's just going to keep going in around in circles. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, of course, I see that the allegory, at least the way it's presented, will keep people definitely searching in the wrong directions, as we've seen by the movies. Because whether it be, like I say, great movies, but none of the movies indicate anybody exiting the cave. They're all about something else. They're all about people learning about the cave, learning how to alter the cave, learning how to make the cave better. No one, even Truman at the end of the Truman Show, he doesn't actually, he leaves the soundstage, and people forget, well, he's going to find Sylvia, and he's going to live in Los Angeles, which is another level of the Matrix, right? He just shifted from one to another. So I totally agree with that. And then you've got the missing parts. So if somebody uses the missing parts really well, I think, and asks the right questions for the right amount of time, and I think that's another point you're making, is these things have to be examined, but up to a certain point, right? You can examine them for the rest of your life, and then you didn't get anywhere. You have to examine things to a point and then say, okay, I got that. If there's something else to examine, I'll examine something else now. And I think that's something I notice is people get caught in certain boxes. They study them to the nth degree, but they forget you got a whole bunch of other boxes you can look into too. It's okay to look in some other stuff and let this one sit,
Right. Yeah, that's kind of where I feel like I am at right now in my life. I can't speak for my brother, but I can speak for myself in saying that I'm really trying to not waste my time anymore. I'm really, really trying not to. I've spent a lot of my life, my brother, we, people don't really know, but we have a very, very detailed, very rich religious background that I feel like was nothing but one big distraction to get us to the point to where we are right now, which is pretty much ground zero. And it's kind of frustrating. At the same time, when it comes to not wasting time, let me just cut myself off there, and let me just get to this one part where I just want to ask you if you can give me just because we try to make our show a little bit more of like and we kind of put it on our first episode, we try to make our show a little bit more like hour 3. That doesn't mean we're going to be talking for another 2 hours or anything. It's just, we understand that you've talked a lot about these topics in a lot of other interviews. So if you can just give me a little bit of just a cliff notes of exactly what you personally believe the cave is from a reality standpoint.
Well, as I always say in every interview I've ever done, and that is, I don't know for sure what's going to happen after we die. I don't know for sure who created this realm exactly and exactly what it is. All I've got is a thesis that I've now shared in Exit the Cave, and that is just designed to get people to think, to ask questions, to go within and come up with your own answers. So I'm just presenting, but my presentation is linked to what particularly the two early groups, the early Gnostics, who wrote the Nag Hammadi texts, and the Cathars, what they had to say about reality. And if I could simplify it, it's that they both were clear that this is the standard foundation we get taught as kids is that this reality that we know of was built by a loving creator who cares about us, who has built it to for us to learn and grow and experience and have a few challenges, but become better and eventually become perfect and meet this God eventually, and then throw in some reincarnation and come back to get better and better and better. And this is what we've been taught. But the Cathars and the Gnostics were very clear that while there is a totality and there is an absolute, the creator of this realm is not that the creator of this realm is something else. The Gnostics call it a demiurge. The Cathars called it Rex Mundi. Different native traditions have different names for this creator force, but you might say it's a evil type of artificial intelligence that created a simulation, a copy, you might say, of true reality. And we, as in what are called divine sparks in many of these texts, were deceived into coming in here and then constantly tricked to stay in here. A key part of that trick is, this is very interesting. So when we say, what is the cave? Well, the cave is everything you can possibly imagine, so to speak. So it's not just the material realm and all the potential other realms and parallel realities. It's also the etheric realm. It's the astral realm. It's the angel realm. It's the super duper realm. It's everything you can think of that is in any way part of duality, part of the tree of good and evil. That is the cave. And what I found so interesting is there's been a lot of talk lately, well, not lately, for the last 30 or 40 years, of how, in a sense, it's a type of, not just a prison, it's a type of farm, that we as divine sparks are here to be farmed for what Robert Monroe called loosh, other people call just energy. And it's an interesting concept, is that if you have this massive, if we assume, let's pretend it's like a computer simulation, if it's a massive computer program, it would need a massive amount of energy. The amount of power that's needed to keep the thing running is huge. It's ingenious, sick but ingenious. If you could get the characters that you put in your game to generate the power to keep the system running, so that in a sense you don't have to plug into anything. The characters in the game keep the power going so that it just can keep spinning. And I if I'm simplifying it, there's my simplification of, I think, what we're dealing with, and everything's a distraction for us not to see that key point.
I have to mention something that I hadn't thought about this till literally when you just mentioned it, even though I've actually heard you say that a few times, as far as us being potential energy generators for this realm. I think it was last year. I actually had this idea that I told my brother was creating a gym, and we'd call it the powerhouse. And essentially all the exercise equipment would be hooked up to power generators, and you'd sell the electricity back to the electrical company.
It's still a good idea. Don't say that online, dude. Don't say that over the air. People are going to steal the idea. It's actually a decent idea. It could work. It could work.
Yeah. You might want it when you're putting this together. You might want to edit that out. You might want to do it.
Yeah, for sure. It's actually a decent.
Honestly,
dude, think about it. You could actually sell it.
That's a pretty good idea. At the very least, never mind selling it back to the company. At least then you wouldn't have to get any power from the company at all, because you're just generating it yourself. Your business is operating at electricity free.
Yeah, because there's nothing more hilarious than basically people paying you to be hamsters on a wheel.
Yeah, just call it the powerhouse, but they don't have to know. They don't even have to know.
Right.
They don't even have to know about it. They just they just go call. Oh, my gym's the powerhouse.
Yeah, I know. They wouldn't have to know. It's just they'd be completely none the wiser until somebody leaks
and they've got really good rates. It's really cheap to go there.
I know,
like
the
the
rates
other company has to pay a lot more than what, you know.
Yeah.
You might want to cut this little piece out and save it. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm not sure it's my calling to start a gym. Maybe I'll leave it in there just so somebody else can take that idea and put it out there. Maybe they'll send me a thanks percentage or something like that. But anyways,
actually before we move further.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm just saying, in this realm, don't expect that. You'll get nothing. Go ahead.
Yeah. You mentioned Robert Monroe. Is that the same Robert? Is that the same Monroe from the Monroe Institute?
Yeah, he wrote a book in 1971 called Far Journeys, in which chapter 12 is where this information of loosh as an idea was first presented. He presented a complete one chapter of what I think is one of the most important.
So he came up with the term loosh?
Yeah, he came up. It was
Oh
his
wow,
term.
okay.
It was
I didn't know
it was
that.
something that he claimed was in one of his out of body experiences, that he met these beings, and the beings gave him this information on what Earth is, how it's run, how it's structured, why it's structured the way it is. Um, just an amazing piece of work. Now, the next part of the story, which is to me is the shocking part, is and I can't verify this 100%. This is just what I've been told about the end of the story. So I'm assuming it's true, might not be true, but probably is that he went through a bit of a depression a couple of weeks after he finished writing the book. So it's been told, because the information was so shocking on some levels. But then I guess he came out of the depression, went to the Monroe Institute, has done great work since, but it was never spoken about again. And a lot of people over the years have contacted him or the Monroe Institute asking for more detail about Loosh and how it operates. And it's just something that's not spoken of anymore, in that group, which seems strange in itself, that something that could be one of the most important
Oh
pieces
yeah.
of knowledge is just like literally brushed under the table.
Yeah, I've looked into some of his work. I know this is not really this isn't where we were supposed to be going down, but I'm actually really curious about this since have you looked at, because I actually have his the Monroe Institute's gateway experience. And it's allegedly
Okay.
it's supposed to be like where you listen to these tones and it will uh uh basically help you to astral project.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you
And
tried it?
well, here's the thing is like I did the first one, felt a little, little weird. And then did the second one. And then when I got to the third one, you kind of feel like you're trying to leave your body. And it's like, I'm not dealing with, this is not okay with me right now. I'm not ready for this kind of feeling at the moment. And so it's one of those things where because one of my big cognitive dissonance that I have in life is we keep hearing about people. We keep hearing about people trying to, escape this realm, but on this plane, we can't possibly understand what it would be like to be a spirit without having some kind of medium form, like even this husk that we live in, this body. What would that be like? I don't know. Like to me, that seems a little unnerving. So why would I want to leave this place that actually I can taste my food and go to another realm while I'm just this spirit being?
Well, it would be a question of, do you want the truth?
Yeah, I
Because
do
if you're
want the
in a,
truth.
if because it well, if you're in a, if you're dealing with a reality that you find to be false, that you find to be actually not true in any way, shape, or form, I learned long ago that this is transparent. There's no solidity.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just here based on perceptions and projections. So once you decide you want the truth more than anything else, you're willing to go to other realms to see, is there truth there? Of course, you find there's not really any truth there either, but it's a different setup. And you start asking, well, what is truth, right? Big question.
Well, that actually it reminds me because on Amazon when your book first came out, I wanted to try and be one of the first people that actually left a review on it. And I pulled it up just because I wanted to have a little bit of a synopsis that I actually put on the website. But I'll just to tell you the first half, and it's just I'm mentioning this because of what you just said. It says with that, if you're looking for a self-help book, then this on the one hand is not self-help for this reality. But on the other hand, it's the ultimate self-help book because only you can exit the cave. This is not for those seeking a better life. It is for those seeking the truth. And Howdie doesn't even promise even that. If it is the truth from his current perspective, and that he is someone who has spent a lot more of his life searching for that truth than most, his insights have immense value. And I said, read the book, but be warned, only you can find your way out of the cave, but you may also find that you are one of the many who may never actually want to leave. And that's essentially what I put on it. And it kind of reminds me of that one phrase from The Matrix. And I know that movie keeps getting brought up as the perfect allegory for a lot of this stuff. And FYI, I do agree that Dark City, in my opinion, is far better. I love that movie, and most people have never even seen it. But the one part in the Matrix when he says, the one thing I've come to learn about being outside the Matrix is that ignorance is bliss, and he eats the steak. There are people out there that would just, they'll eat steak, digital steak their entire life, being perfectly happy with not knowing what the truth is. And the truth, the truth, in my opinion, I've gotten really tired of truth that makes me feel good. Truth that makes me feel good, just, it always feels like there's this element of somebody's trying to sell something. It's like what the main
cults are made.
Yeah, that's how cults are made. And we are very familiar with the whole cult mentality. And even what he says, he says in the main character in Princess Bride, he says, life is pain. Anybody who says any differently is trying to sell you something. And for my naive self in the past always hated that line, but I've kind of like, no, that actually is kind of true in a lot of ways. So anyways, let me get back to we haven't even really gotten to the top part of my questions. And like I said, I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of them, but I kind of wrote them in such a way where I'm kind of wanting to look at things from the top down and get down to the details. But I guess the one thing that keeps nagging me in your book, as well as what other people are saying in regards to this topic, which aren't that many, there's very few people talking about this in the way that you're presenting it. But the one thing that keeps nagging me is that if there is a demiurge or any kind of archon, anything that is, I would guess you could say, not doing things in our best interests, who actually rules this realm. Even in the New Testament, it says Satan is the god of this realm. There's all kinds of evidence is saying that there is a dark entity ruling all of this stuff, and there's plenty of evidence to say that that's probably true. The question I keep getting that I don't seem to be really getting a really good answer for, and I'm not even expecting even you to have one, because I think it's a hard question to answer, is if there is there a main top numero uno God all character in this crazy all of existence reality? And if he's good, he has to be at the very least complicit in all of this that's going on. Otherwise, he's either lacking power or he has some kind of like legal cosmic obligation for us being here in this shit show. Does that make sense to some extent?
Yeah, I was lucky. He sent me over the questions beforehand, just so you all know. And they're definitely philosophically deep questions. And even though I've seen them, I can't say I'm going to have any kind of really good answer for them. But of course, this is something we can't know for sure, right?
Right.
But the Gnostics and the Cathars, for example, both describe a being, and that's not even the right word, because they were clear not to use words like God or anything. They used they called it the One. Excuse me. In the Apocryphon of John, it's this totality, this absolute is always called the One. So it's got they try to say no name, and it's also not male. It's a combined male female perfection, you might say, that's merged into one thing, but it's not even one thing. So they seem to describe that. Okay, so it seems like there's this outside that if you can think of our entire cave as like a ball, maybe, or something like that, then there's this thing that's outside the ball. So then, okay, good question. Why does the thing outside the ball let the ball continue, right? And again, you have to read these Gnostic texts like again and again and again to kind of try to maybe figure out what they're pointing towards. But it seems like, in a sense, you have to remember, we as divine sparks. Okay, how to say this simply? The creation itself by this demiurge, or whatever you want to call it, is a false creation. The creator was made by, in Gnostic terms, by accident. Sophia tried to create without her male counterpart, created this being, this serpent slash lion-headed being, who attempted to create on its own and became drunk with the power of creation, and then deceived, because he couldn't get it running, in a sense, deceived us, divine sparks, to come in to bring life in, to copy the external in the internal. And so you might say we were deceived to come in. Thanks. We were deceived to come in. So there's also a little bit, in some way, we agreed to enter here. On one way or another, we agreed to enter this insane place. So from the outside, it might be and this is just I'm just spitballing, right? I'm just throwing out ideas. It might be this sense of this being is giving some time to see if the ship can be righted from within, just kind of like seeing if this can be somehow. But it seems like parts of things like Revelation and some other similar destructive like mythology indicates that there is a time already foretold in the future when the thing that's not the creator, right? This one is saying this thing is finished. We're shutting this down. And I think that will happen at some point. And a lot of what I think we're seeing in this time frame, year 2020 through 2023 now, and going to continue, is the top down through the minions that run this place, I think an attempt to keep the simulation going, make sure it doesn't get shut down, and in fact create a split even in the simulation where they lose a few souls, but the rest of them get trapped in an even deeper metaverse, an even deeper layer of the simulation. And so, simple answer, but I've said kind of something like that a few times before, but that's the best I can answer, I think, for that. But, you know.
Yeah.
Before we move any further, I just want to ask, because I've actually looked a lot into trying to find out information about the cathars. And of course, I mean, I went online. I didn't go to a library, because all libraries are just packed with new books anyway now. And but do you have any specific texts or anything that you've read that people might be able to go to look up read about the cathars? Because I know a little bit about them from websites, but not any kind of old archaic texts that I could research.
No, again, that's one of the problems, right? Is when the Church of Rome decided they were too dangerous, this group of vegetarian slash pacifists needed to be eliminated and killed off. They made sure not only they killed all them off, they burned all their books, they burned everything that was, so everything that they had that indicate who and what they were was pretty much gone. There's only a few texts that survived at all. And a lot of what was known about them for a long time is what the Church of Rome wrote about them. You know, what they wrote to each other, why we need to do this. Here's what came out of their inquisitions. Here's what so it's all being written by the persecutors. We have almost nothing written by the people themselves. And I know there's questions coming up to go into detail about possibly why that might be. So I would say looking for a book to read about them is going to be tough, simply because we know so little. And that's part of the mystery. Part of the mystery is because everything's been so totally wiped out. You have to ask, well, why? Why is it so totally wiped out? Because there's obviously they obviously felt there was something dangerous that they needed to eliminate it. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, we've kind of danced around a little bit, a little bit of the next part, which I guess I kind of asked, but I just want to cover my bases before we get any further. As I'm just trying to understand the only conclusion I can possibly come to in regards to there being because you mentioned him as the one, or there's the demiurge. You know, there's always this, good versus evil versus good. Which is more powerful? Are they the same? Is it there's more this yin yang kind of thing where they're both actually one thing? And all I can seem to come to some kind of major conclusion is that the head dude that is, even if he's not good, he's at at best, he has to be at the very least neutral. And he has this happening for a reason. And if the demiurge is just one of these things that's in control of all this and created it, according to what you're talking about in historical texts, he's been allowed to. And he has to have been allowed to, in the sense that it's like, okay, I'm creating you, this thing called the demiurge, and I am commanding you to be an asshole. Do you know what I'm saying? I am insisting that you do everything in your power to make these people's lives a pain in the ass, be a pain in their ass all the time. And I want it that way. Why? I'm not telling you. And maybe somebody will figure it out someday. And I'm not saying that you have the answer. I'm not saying I have the answer.
What I can't say too much. I know what your question is, and it's a very good question. It's a part of the current research that I'm doing for the next book. So
Which
I'm not at the point to really just, I can't really describe that at this point, other than to say, if I can say it this way, the texts are kind of clear again that there was a standard form of the way creation was supposed to happen in this place of one, and the demiurge was created different than all the others. So it already is separate from the totality. It's already, it itself is an imperfect creation. So because it's imperfect, hence the creation it creates becomes imperfect. So it wasn't in a sense made by this. I'm just going what the Gnostics would say, right? So it wasn't made by this one. It was made by incorrectly. So then you could ask, well, if it was made incorrectly, we've made mistakes when we're cooking, and we just stop and we throw it in the garbage and start all over again, and it's no problem. So why didn't they throw the demiurge in the garbage? That's a good question, and I don't know. Right. And why has it gone on? Now, of course, we say it's gone on for thousands of years, or however long this has gone on. But we don't know what thousands of years is in true total time, or if that really means much, or we're dealing with cosmic concepts mostly through a very simplistic egoic mind that is operating in a very tight box of what it can contemplate, and so puts us in a really difficult pose. You have to feel some of this out, and you have to have some experiences that give you some doorways that kind of tell you, maybe not. And that's the best I can do to answer. These are valuable questions. Well, don't stop asking them.
Yeah,
if you ever get an answer, let me know.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's just to shift gears a little bit. You mentioned, and it's not in this order in my questions, but that's fine. It's kind of keeping with a little bit of the theme, but you mentioned a lot in your book about NDEs, near-death experiences, and the whole concept that you bring, that when you die, you are being presented a choice whether to continue on or you go towards the white light that you hear throughout all of Hollywood and books and all these kind of mediums telling you that it's this loving, joyous place where they're just leading you off to grandma and Jesus, and it's going to be this perfect place. And what you've proposed is that white light is actually the thing you want to actually avoid. And I guess the question I have is, because what you're saying is that they're deceiving you into going into this seemingly loving place, but I guess the way I'm asking it is, to what extent do you think that they could deceive you? And I'll give you a for instance, and this is the one that's been in the back of my head since I've been reading this book. You've got grandma there, and you say, "You're not my grandma. I don't know who you are." You've got these angels telling you, but everything you could ever want is beyond this light. And you're like, "Screw that. I've read Howdie's book. I know what that light is." And and I know that you've talked about being in the astral realm and it being a little different, but
tell
this is all
Archangel
hypothetical.
Major, it's like Howdie Mickoski said for you, Howdie
Mickoski said piss off, and you do all that. But I almost, in my mind, I went down a much darker route, and I was like, what if they were like, in your physical realm, you didn't believe hell existed. Well, take a look at this shit. And then all of a sudden, the gates of hell open up, and it's pure torment. And they say, go into that little white light, or there's where you're going. That's to the extent that I'm wondering, could it be something as insane as that to get you back in here? Or do they have some kind of limits on what they can do? Because honestly, if I got into that in that state, and I'm like, I've already renounced everything I believe, but now I'm in this realm where they're literally showing me the pits of hell, and I'm just going to take it on the fact that I read Howdie's book 3 times. I mean, don't take that the wrong way, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. Do you think it really could go to that extent?
First of all, I don't think I'd be using me as a key reference in that situation.
Fair enough.
Howdie, it's my new Bible now. It's like we're going to create a cult out of it. You know,
that's how these things start, actually. You know, it's
Howdie Mickoski cult.
The other thing is, you mentioned right at the beginning, you said there's a choice. I don't think there is a choice being that's ever thrown. It's situations that are thrown at you. So I've had the chance to look at a lot of near-death experiences. There's a great website, nderf.org, that has hundreds of them, maybe thousands of them. Forever Conscious Research Channel does great jobs. Mark does a great job going through near-death experiences. There's lots of channels that post them. He looks at other views of it. So generally, it's always presented in very loving, wonderful, fantastic terms. That's usually how it's presented, of course, because the person hasn't died. It's a near-death experience. So they're coming back. And in a sense, they're not ready. And there's reasons they're not ready. Not ready from the standpoint to grow. I mean, not ready for what these beings want in their death, you might say. But there are 15% of experiences that are nothing like the white light loving experience. They're very, very dangerous and dark and revealing, like you say. Grandma and Jesus are there, and then all of a sudden the face comes off and they see what's really behind Grandma and Jesus in there. So these ones that are not the wonderful white light experiences, I think, are so important for us to get a better sense of what's going on. So to finally get to your question, these beings, I think, remember, they have the access to the Akashic record. So they have access to everything you've ever done, every thought you've ever had, every experience you've ever had. They can read all that and determine what's the best choices we have to get you to do what we want you to do. So it might be offering you things. It might be, maybe for some people, it's like, well, you always wanted this, you always wanted that. You know, for other people, it'll be giving them the kind of loving and wonderful experience, or the person that's been close to them that they died and haven't seen for a while. Put that in. For others, it'll be extreme fear. For others, it could be all sorts of stuff. They could try to throw everything at you, and it's not like, well, we can be ready for everything. No, you can't be. I think all we can do is seemingly the first step is just say no to everything if possible, and just get your ground. Just start figuring out, where am I? It's going to be a confusing moment. So step one is just don't go ahead with anything. Try to make some decisions. Okay, and if it becomes really dark and dangerous, then they're doing that because it's built to you. It's built to what's going to break you down. And so is there a way you can, I don't know, is there a way you can work to jump around it now, even to avoid that as an option for you?
Well, then, okay, so, but you mentioned earlier that even in the Bible, it speaks, or in many traditions, it speaks that the actual one, the one source has this plan to say, all right, we're shutting it down. Game over. Y'all didn't figure it out. We're getting rid of it. So it does seem like it would make a lot of sense to try to exit this. I mean, obviously, since 2000, I mean, we always knew that the world was kind of messed up, but after 2020, it almost got like, okay, are you just trying to show me the magic trick, demiurge? Because you're being too obvious now. You're being way too obvious. Like with the NPCs, it's insane. It's like it's almost like okay, if y'all haven't figured this out now, you're really dumb. It's almost like the demiurge is saying, it's like, I'm showing you my hand. Here it is. Here's my cards. If you still can't beat me at this game, then you deserve to come back here. You're an idiot, you know?
Right.
So why wouldn't wouldn't it make sense
Again,
to just wait
again,
until
it's
it's
not
over?
that. I wouldn't use the word idiot. The word would just be the belief structures that have been taken in, and the various faiths and fears and hopes and dreams and all of these emotional elements have wrapped around a certain view of the world that doesn't allow questioning into things that are bigger than that. That's what it is. So it has
Yeah.
nothing to do technically with the level of intellect. It has to do with how tightly identified is somebody with their box. Because if you can allow yourself to say, actually, I have these things I believe, but I don't know for sure, and I'm going to start looking around, there might be other answers. Most people don't want to do that. In fact, they can't. Not only because their whole sense of self and reality is built on it, but I mean, generally people are working 8 to 10 hours a day with commuting. They've got 2 kids. They've got to take them to soccer practice. They've got to get this done. They've got to get the laundry finished. They have no time. Like contemplation, true contemplation first requires a willingness to do it and then the time to make it happen. Very few people have the time to make it happen. It's one of the things I was so thankful about being a comedian 25 years ago when I started this exploration, is it gave me so much time other than when I was on stage. Okay, so I was on stage or I had some traveling, and yeah, okay, but the rest of the week, I had nothing else I had to do. So I could just read, I could just think, I could just go for walks, I could do exercises, I could practice stuff. And that was something that I realized was just a gift. And that time, available time is a gift. And we have to try to take advantage of the available time we have always to ask these deep questions.
So he just mentioned the and I personally, like you, hate the term because it's so video gamey, and it's the whole element of NPCs, which is also becoming a big topic. It's, for me personally, one of the more unnerving concepts that seem to make a lot of sense, but it's something I don't like thinking about. It's something that really bugs me when I look at somebody and I'm like, everything about you has this element of being a soulless automaton, but you still look so much like a person, you know. And it's I don't like the idea of me being in front of somebody and not being seeing them as a equally spiritual person, because I've been brought up my whole life to believe that we're all created in God's image. We're all, all men are created equal, which all the things that we've been told our whole lives is that we're all trying to come to this equality. Mm-hmm. And the newest term I heard on your channel is, I think you came up with, was potential soul vehicles. Which I like that one, in the sense that, a lot of people around here just seem to be walking around like meat suits, and they don't think anything beyond what's going on today or what the next sports event is. And I'm like, I want to shoot myself when I hear people talking about the weather or sports. I'm like, I can't even be in this room. I'm like, I'm losing my mind. But I guess the reason I'm bringing it up primarily is because while it seems to make the most sense, it seems to also have been highlighted since 2020. It seems to have gone straight up into full on. Everybody who doesn't seem to have the original divine spark in them is like, has a spotlight on them practically. And it was actually something I don't know, this is purely speculation. I put it down in my questions just to see what you might have thought of it. Was, as I'm sure you know, the Georgia Guidestones were recently blew up by who knows. And everybody looked at those as they were nefarious, and they were like, "Oh, they're trying to kill us all." And after thinking about this, I was like, what if that 350 million that they talk about on this is them kind of they're alluding to those who are real people around here. And this 8 billion people we got going around are just like fillers. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it feels like there's a lot of fillers going on.
Yeah. And I like the term, first of all, I like the term now, potential soul vehicle, because the other term makes these others feel like robots, and they're not. There's no difference between me and you and them and everybody else. We're all exactly the same. We're built the same way. We have the same cellular structure. We process information the same way. Food is the same way. Everything is exactly the same. There's just this extra element of internal power which triggers critical thinking, deep philosophical thinking that just seems to be missing. In the Gnostics talk about this too. They talk about 3 classes of people. They had the hilics or the somatics, right, which were just basically they called them people focused only on the material realm. There were, I think it was called psychics, and then there was I can't remember them all now, but there were three different classifications of people that you saw around you. So it's important that they're fully human, like they're human. They do everything human, other than if you get in conversations with them, you will notice that if you try to move the conversation into anything of depth, and it doesn't have to be like subjects of the universe and God and death. I mean, just subjects like, I'm reading a book now about the history of the education system and how the education system was actually built. A great book, and it's got all of these layers then of, well, how is it built? Why is it being done this way? What, the average person who's what we were calling this PSV, potential soul vehicle, doesn't really want to go and have that discussion. The school system's got some problems, somebody else will figure it out, let's have another drink. And that's so that's kind of how you start to know. You notice that there's the boxes, it doesn't matter the subject, when the box starts to have to get to why is it the way it is, doesn't it seem crazy the way things are, how did it get this way, that's where they don't want to go. And it's a really good way, if you're, again, building a system to keep certain soul individuals here, is that generally, if there's 15 out of 20 people you bump into, you can't have these conversations with, and you try to, you'll start to get tired of them. And you'll bump into one person. Oh, I can have a conversation with, Jim or Mary or something, but you maybe don't see them very often. Or maybe they live in the next city over, so you hardly ever see them and your friends. So it also makes the ability to even have depth of conversation difficult. You can see how there's so many pieces of how that could be part of the game here. And again, I call them potential soul vehicles because in this particular run through of this particular thing we're calling Life on Earth 2023, maybe they don't have a divine spark. And let's say I do this time. I consider this to be multiple realities, parallel realities, or perhaps like Groundhog Day. This thing just keeps resetting and re-looping, and we've lived this same thing, this same 500 years or something 1,000 times. So maybe in another one, the divine spark that went into me in this one, well, it goes into the one that that's why I can't look down on anyone I'm calling an NPC. People say, oh, you're looking down on these people, you're belittling them. No, I have to be honest and see reality as I see it right now. There's something missing there. But if I could see a different reality playing out, a different life, they might have the divine spark, and I might be the one sitting here and they're asking me these questions. And I'm like, what are you asking me this for? I just want to watch the hockey game, Right. So it's also interesting to see that we don't want to over-label this information, but we do want to be clear with what we are experiencing and what we're seeing, and trust that. And then, of course, the most important question, how do I use what I know to my advantage for whatever my goal is? And okay, my goal is to exit the matrix, to return home, but that doesn't have to be anyone else's goal. Their goal might be something different. And so the whole point is, know what you really want, know what your goal is, know what your whole what your reason for doing anything is, then with the information you have, you know how you're supposed to apply it. If you don't really know what you want, this is a big spiritual problem, right? Everyone says, or used to be when it was a big thing in the 80s or 90s, I'm going to become enlightened. I'm going to go find a guru and become enlightened. Not many people ask, what does that mean? What do you mean? What is enlightenment?
No.
They might give you a really simplistic answer. No, I mean, like, explain it. What is it? Well, I don't really know. Then how do you know if you want it? It's this really weird thing of
Right,
like,
right.
so know what you want first, and then you can find out where you should go and what you're supposed to do to get it.
Yeah.
That.
Well, actually, Jonah, you should tell them your story about the airport NPC. Like, okay, this goes back. This goes back to the louche harvesting thing, because like with the cathars, Robert Monroe he came up with the term louche harvesting, and that's one thing I've noticed. Like, I've actually been very aware of it, because I've always been this person that will be like, why is that person talking on the phone on speaker in front of me? Like, it's like things people will do that intentionally will annoy you and will annoy everybody else around them, but everybody else doesn't seem to be annoyed by it, but I'm infuriated by it. But you tell them your NBC airport story.
Okay,
This
so
is great.
I actually just recently posted it on Instagram just because I thought it was so funny. It was one of those energy vampire moments that was so obvious it almost didn't work, because I was almost finding it humorous. Not almost, I was genuinely finding it humorous. Besides talking on this podcast and having a long conversation about things that actually matter, I am one of these people that could be by himself and not talk to anybody for months and be perfectly fine. So when I go to the airport and I sit down, I find a place where nobody else would even want to sit, much less sit next to me. And I'm sitting in one spot. There's quite literally got to be 100 seats in every direction around me. And I see this guy walk by wearing a mask, walk completely past me and keep going. And, I think nothing of it, whatever. 5 minutes later, this guy comes out from out of nowhere and sits directly behind me. I could have just nudged my head back and would have hit him. There's nobody else around. Nobody. Just him and me, and he's sitting right behind me. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. There's no way.
There's like 100 chairs around that he could have gone anywhere.
He could have gone anywhere.
But
he sits right behind me. I was like, this is insane.
And then what happened?
And I basically just started taking pictures, waiting to see if maybe he sat there to plug in his phone, because that's where the outlets were. He didn't charge anything. He just kept sitting there. And I got out of my chair and took a widescreen of everything just to show the vast number of seating that he could have sat at. And there he is, just sitting there. Nothing happened. It was just, he was there sitting with his mask on, staring at his phone, doing whatever people do at an airport. But it was just the audacity that he would just sit there. It was so weird. I couldn't wrap my head around it. It was like, I would have never done that in a million years.
Because this is something I write about in Falling for Truth. So you might not be dealing with a PSV NPC here. I also write about how what you might call spirit beings at different times manifest in not just human form, but bird form, animal form, whatever. And they're there to provide information or some type of message to it. They're not actually there to antagonize us or cause us a problem. They're just there to produce a piece of information if we're aware enough to know. And I've had various instances in my life like this where that's happened, and been with others when it was happening. And when I knew it was something for them, not me. And when it was done, when they'd come back, boy, that was really weird. And the first thing I'd ask is, what did they say to you? What do you mean? Well, what did they say? What was their conversation? Well, they talked about, no, exactly. What was every single word that they said specifically? I mean, do you want me to remember every word? Yes. Because every single word was a message for you, and you have to remember each one, because if you don't, you're going to miss a great important opportunity. So it's, you also, when one of those things happen, there needs to be this instantaneous, okay, am I dealing with just, yeah, sort of a brain dead person, or am I dealing with is something else going on, that there's a message here and I need to kind of perk myself up and find out what it was. That's why I was curious if anything else happened that could have been seen as indication of pay attention.
And no, there was almost no other indication of anything. The only thing that even kind of stood out to me was, and I know that you have a lot of your stuff on Matt from Quantum of Conscience's channel. He posts a lot of your stuff. I don't know if you have it, but he has a lot of your stuff posted, and he brings up the color magenta a lot. And I don't know if you've ever listened to him talk about it, but the only thing that stuck out to me was he was wearing a mask and his bag was bright magenta. That was the only thing I remember, and it was like, okay, that's interesting. So, and I don't even know, I honestly don't even know what his whole thing is in regards to that, but I don't want to talk too much about that whole incident. It was just one of those things that was blatantly not, it was not in the realm of the normal, so, but just to continue, I want to switch gears just a little bit, because even if we don't talk about much of anything else, there's one, and I don't want to, I know it's probably going to start getting late for you where you're at. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but the question I have kind of ties in a little bit with your thesis on Jesus coming from France and that being linked up with the cathars. And it's not that part of the story that I find implausible. It's the part where it switches over to being Judeo-Christian that I'm trying to understand. Because, and just to give you a brief background with my brother and I, we grew up very Christian, then very, very Christian. Then we became, I don't know if you ever heard of it before, but Messianic Jewish, which is basically Christian with a Jewish spin. So you basically are taking the elements of Jesus being Jewish, and you start acting more Jewish. And then we went into Orthodox Messianic Judaism, which is like Orthodox Judaism. And then we started moving into just being straight up Orthodox Jewish. And now we're in the part where we're talking to Howdie Mickoski on the podcast. So,
hey,
long story short.
So you're planning to write a book of various religions in the world seen through my eyes.
I could very easily. That's the reason why I'm asking you this, because the reason I'm asking you this is because I can tell you from a logical standpoint, I don't, in my experience, I can't possibly see anybody who is Christian who truly thinks about what they're reading in this book that they have on all the pews called the Bible, and not ultimately becoming Jewish at some point. Because Jesus, according to the scriptures, he was always presented as Jewish, acted Jewish, followed Jewish tradition in Jerusalem, in Israel, part of the Jewish people, all, Jew, everything's Jewish all the time. But after, like I said, because of where we're at right now, even none of that seems to make a lot of sense based off of any kind of historical narrative. It just seems like these books were picked out by the now I'm forgetting what the name of it is, the Council of Nicaea. They're picking these books out and saying, we want these very Jewish books to be in the canon, and Paul, and now Jesus is Jewish, and the Jews now own Jesus even though they deny him. And the reason I'm bringing it up to you is because you're saying he was French, or at least the story is French. And I'm not saying
possible.
Yeah. I get it. And I want to make that very clear. You're not stating facts here, not stating that the rock solid, this is how it is. And if this is basically some conclusions you've come to. I was just trying to understand is what would be your theory as to why, if what you're saying is potentially true, what would be the point in changing it from something that had its roots in Eastern Europe and then going down into the Middle East and turning into
You mean
this
Western Europe?
Western
France.
Europe.
Yeah.
Western
Yeah.
Europe.
Okay. Yeah, I got your question. So simple answer. Because one thing about the story, I rejected the story completely for a long time. I assumed, like most religious things, it's all just mythology. It's all just it's a story of information. There's useful information, but there's no history to it. Okay. That's what I thought for a long time. But only after working through the Cathars and the story of Rennes-le-Château and the Knights Templar and really trying to understand, why does this area of France get all of this bizarre attention, the Holy Grail? I mean, everything is centered on this one place. And with a group of people who claim that the only thing that matters is breaking the reincarnation cycle and leaving. So things began to, and people can sort of look into the book and then look into other videos and things that they want, that would answer a lot of questions if that were true. If the story, if there's elements of the story that are actually factually true in some way and took place in this part of the world, that would explain Cathars and the Knights Templar and what happened there, what the Holy Grail could be. I mean, explained all of that stuff. And it would also then explain if a group in Rome needed to take control of everything, and religion is an important way of taking control of everything, of the minds of your subjects, then the first thing you have to do is make sure that the story you want to present isn't presented in its true location. That would make complete sense, especially because then you have the actual places, you have the actual where there's energy. If this was a real person who had real experiences and had even real miracles, they're still in the original place, right? That it's like when I go to Giza or I go to Teotihuacan, the experiences are built into the ancient site. So the energies and the knowledge, and it's there. You know, you can't study Giza from Seattle. I like Seattle, nice city, but you have to go to Giza if you want to study Giza. You have to go to Teotihuacan. So if you really want to, if that's true, and you really want to know the story of this and the Magdalene and everyone else, there's certain sites. But if then you decide, okay, we're going to move the story and we're going to relink it to this other book that we had, now known as the Old Testament, we're going to make sure we link it to that book and redirect it somewhere else, then certain teaching tools could still survive in the book, but the majority of the focus would go to a completely different place. Therefore, you might say the energies won't be accessed, because if the energies get accessed, this is just, again, a thesis. If the energies get accessed, then you might be accessing the direct teachings yourself. You might be accessing the knowledge of the Cathars and the Knights Templar. We know what happened to them. They don't want that information rolling around. Same thing with the Gnostics, right? They were killed off too. That's the reason we were lucky enough to have these, the Nag Hammadi fragments. They were hidden at the time when they were all being burned. The last groups of these books were being burned in Egypt. So that would be my simple answer to you, is that misdirect from where it's really where it really happens, so that you energetically could never make the complete connection to that point. Simple answer, but that's what I would say to it.
Very interesting. Yeah, I honestly hadn't even really thought of that. It felt like my first initial instinct was a little bit assuming all of this was true. It seemed like that if there was this element of spiritual, whether you call it power or truth, that peoples of any group always seem to tend to usurp things that have immense value or power. And I wouldn't hold it past anybody to take something and just kind of make it their own in order for it to have some kind of element of, well, it's ours now. And it has this kind of power. I'm not saying that's what necessarily happened. It was just my first gut reaction to kind of what you were talking about. And it was when you were talking about the Cathars, because my brother had heard of them. I had never heard of the Cathars till I heard you mention them and talk about them in the book. And I'm like, well, this is, for being somebody who's known so much about just about every branch of Christianity, going all the way back to the Quakers and even before that, I've never heard of the Cathars. And to me, seem to have one of the more interesting elements to them And this is beyond, taking Branch Davidians or, anybody else that goes into that really weird element of Christianity. But this was something wildly different that seemed to, I guess, brush with the Gnostics a little bit, and not,
no difference.
Yeah, and I was like, this is the fact that the Gnostics always seem to have this element of not being pansies, not just taking what thing they were like. No, God has this element, or we're in control of our own spiritual progress, as you were. And the cathars seemed to, like, kind of what you're talking about, is they were like, we kind of get it, and we're not here to change the world. We're here to just get out of it, because the world is it's kind of like in a video game. When you're in a video game, there's only so much you can do, but you're not changing the nature of the game itself ever, until you literally break the code, and then who knows what'll happen from there. But this thing we're in right now is set up to be a purgatorial style hell in a lot of ways. And I keep asking myself, it was one of those things that even in my religious days, I was always asking people, it's like, why would God create us as these meat bags that constantly are sweating and bleeding and crapping and taking pisses all the time? And then on top of all that, we need to be constantly eating stuff and killing stuff and eating stuff and killing stuff. And all during that entire time, you're thinking about all these other little details that seem to don't everybody's like, oh, the human body is so incredible. I'm like, is it? Why did God make it to where our, even if you look at something as simple as, why did God put our balls on the outside of our body? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, people are like, oh, well, it's to keep the sperm from, getting too hot or something. I don't even know what the reasoning is why science says it, but I'm like, God created balls. He didn't have to make them outside of my body for them to be viciously attacked at any moment.
Are you having is this some kind of deep-seated fear you have right now?
Absolutely. It's every man's deep-seated fear.
I know, but it's like, you think about this a lot.
I'm just saying, there's stuff about humanity, or even flesh-like creatures as a whole, that doesn't seem to make sense from a God who could be like, well, why don't we just make them feed off of the sun, or something like that.
More importantly, we don't fit in here at all.
Absolutely,
we're the
not.
only creature
that's one thing I loved what you said.
We need shelter. We need fire. We need all sorts of stuff just to survive. More importantly, glasses. How about grass allergies? What bear or deer has a grass allergy? The very thing you're supposed to be in 24 hours. Like that's a guaranteed death if all of a sudden your eyes start watering because you're in grass, and a predator's on the other side of you. Yeah. So everything, when you start asking questions, everything about our makeup, while it is quite amazing, it also doesn't fit this particular realm. And, again, the stories of whether it be Robert Monroe or many others, the Gnostics, talk about how there's many versions of creation. This is just one of many different layers of creation, or many different layers of the simulation. And we were in the world was different in different periods of time, in different, when we were in the etheric realm or the astral realm or whatever. I mean, it was different. And this is just a very dense, thick, heavy duty place with a body that doesn't really fit in here, almost like it was made on the fly. Like the deer and the bear and the bird, they fit in really well, but it's like, we got to figure out how to get these divine sparks into this world. So come up with something. You got 2 hours, and this is what they came up with.
Right.
That's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, they're rushing to the drafting room or whatever. It's like, I've thought that for most of my life. I've thought that, and is something I'm glad you brought up, because we absolutely positively don't fit in here. Every single other creature out there, whether it's 100 degrees or 10 degrees, they're just like, nah, tomorrow I'm just making sure I get some water and I'm fine. And we're here, if it's not within a 20 degrees, if within 20 degrees, we're miserable one way or the other. We're too hot, we're too cold, we're too hungry. You know, this bed doesn't feel right. My shoes hurt. You know, every element of what we do, it doesn't seem to make sense. And even us, you know, everybody talks about, oh, we're such advanced creatures because we walk upright. Well, what if that's a major disadvantage, which in a lot of ways it is? You know, oh, we walk upright. Yeah, well, that just means they can push me over a lot easier. You know, we don't run fast. You know? But yeah, I'm mostly just I'm agreeing with you in a lot of other detailed ways that it doesn't seem like we fit in here at all. And a lot of what you're saying in what you're talking about just seems to make a lot of sense. And leading into that, it brings me to my other question is, well, I don't know if Josh had something to say about that.
Oh no, I was just saying, like, nothing. It always irritated me when people would say the height of our evolution is our brain and our opposable thumbs, and I'm like, what the hell is opposable thumbs have to do with anything? Like, that's what we got. Why didn't we get these like amazing like shells like a turtle?
Or
you know, why anything or more arm, anything that would make us survive in this, or being able to, like, you're in Norway, right? You can't go outside without dying in the wintertime if you are not completely prepared for that. And we're talking within minutes, not in an hour. We're talking about, like, you could die within minutes if you are not completely bundled up and you have to stay out there. Yeah. That's unnatural, you know, but you could throw a dog outside for 2 or 3 hours. They'll probably be just fine, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, but like I was saying, that was what brought me to my kind of just leading to the next part is, and I just want to hear your explanation for it, because I believe I have the best explanation in my own mind of what this is why would there be so much, I guess, aesthetic beauty in this world that seems to be completely useless in every way whatsoever to any person that's out there, be it a mountain, an ocean, other than the fact that you've got to either climb it or sail it, but a mountain, an ocean, the stars, all of these things that seem to have this intensely vast either beauty and detail to them. It's kind of like we accept the world, like in the Truman Show, we accept the world in which we're presented. We are presented with this insanely vast realm, most of which most of us will never see even a fraction of it. But we're presented with this vast realm that I'm trying to understand why it would be that way, is if it could have been made much simpler and not so interesting, and we still get to do basically what we do on a daily basis. Why do you think it's this way at all?
Just because it's complex doesn't mean it's difficult to make, right? I mean, if you run computer code and you put the code in first to, you know, like these AI things that can make photographs now, right? Once you've got the code in the machine, all you have to do is woman on street in a red coat, boom, and it has the girl in the street, okay, dog on the street, and it just makes it for you. So the only difficult part is just the code. Once you've got the code in place, once it's all put together, it literally just does it itself. It can become, it doesn't matter how complex it is out here. It's simplistic at the code level. On one level, I think that's what shamans and sort of these, what you might call well-known individuals of the past, they were hacking into the code of the matrix. They were getting to the code and figuring out, how can I play around with the code so I can change reality? Because that's another thing I found from all my experience. When I found out the world is transparent, the world then is also moldable, it's shapeable. Now that becomes a big trap, because then the spiritual community has made billions of dollars trying to sell people on manifestation ideas, right? To how to make your dreams come true and get whatever you want and have the world to be exactly what you want it to be. And that's not really the point of it. The point is you could do it, but you find out that you kind of don't really want to. But it's this interplay of manifestation. Richard Rose had said, one of the greatest quotes I've ever come across is that you can move mountains, but the mountains have to agree to be moved. That's just so important, because it means there's a totality of this realm, but why should I decide what's best for the mountain myself? Why am I that arrogant? It's the way the natives taught me. I don't even go and take a rock or a flower from nature unless I first sort of sit with that thing I'm going to take and first feel, does it want to come back with me? I mean, it might be really happy where it is. Why should I take the rock or the flower to my house just because I like it? Who am I to tell a rock or a flower what to do? They're equal to me in this realm. So I have to first feel like, yes, this is what they want. There's a reason I'd like to take you from where you are and take you to my house. I'm doing something with you. If you want to join, that's great. And then I'd leave some kind of gift in place for saying, for having it go with me. And that's a huge part of the manifestation process, truly, that is to acknowledge the thing that you're working with in the manifesting type process. Is that what it wants too? Otherwise, you're just going to have a battle on your hands. And so why is it set up this way? It might just be you need some beauty sometimes, because you can't have suffering all the time. If you've had suffering 24 hours and pain and conflict 24 hours a day, you might start figuring this place out.
Right.
Times of war awaken people pretty quickly. A lot of their illusions go out the window when that starts to happen. So if all of a sudden you have a lot of break periods and a lot of things that are very nice and things that are pleasant, it can be easy to then overlook some of the other stuff because, but this is so good. Ooh, and if you're thinking of it as a battery, if something harsh and challenging and negative is draining the battery, well, now the battery's empty. How do you get the battery back up so we can drain it again? Well, you would have to do something that energizes the battery. So you also might have a world that's designed on one level to drain you and on another level to recharge you symbolically. That would be an answer.
Yeah, that's kind of to some extent. I in my head I put it a little more simply, was more like, that's the reason why you put little castles in a fishbowl. I mean, the fish just wants something to swim around in, or that's why you put a wheel in a hamster cage. It's something to do to keep you from not hating where you're at, to always. And that's what it feels like sometimes. I don't want to take up. We've been talking for a good chunk of time, so I don't. This has been awesome. I don't know if my brother probably has something to ask you, I'm sure, but
if you got like another question or something, that's we can throw out another one here. If there's something you wanted to ask that you want to get out. So see what you guys have that you want to get out.
I have something, but this goes back to where I first heard you. I was saying this. My brother actually sent me over the episode, was when you were in Crow, but I'd never even thought of looking into World's Fair until I heard it from you, and I was completely mesmerized by this. Like, I looked at Omaha. We lived in Omaha for 4 years. We went to high school there. We grew up in New Orleans and went to high school in Omaha. Omaha does not look like that. Like, you look at the expeditions and you're like, I'll show people a picture of it on my phone. We're like, where do you think that is? And they're like, I don't know, somewhere in Europe. It's like, that's Omaha, Nebraska. And they're like, I know, no, it's not. And I'm like, and I'll zoom up on a pit and there's a big word that says Omaha on one of the buildings. And they're like, what the hell happened to those? And I'm like, you tell me. I'd like to know. And so, because going back to, you like when you talk about, Jesus and, tying it all back together, because, this kind of dungeon that we're living in. And since we all know that our history is really skewed, is it possible that time was actually like, this world might not be as old as we think it is? And that was actually where we kind of started. Like, and then the J-Man comes down in France and is like, look out, y'all, everything's about to get fucked up real fast. And then now we have what we have now. What we could have been living like what we had in the World's Fair. So basically, I'm just kind of looking at everything you've said as a whole, like everything you've written as kind of a whole picture, as World's Fair. Possibly our world looked like that back then. Then it starts everything starts catching on fire. And maybe Jesus isn't that old, isn't that long ago. And then next thing you know, we're here living in boxes and watching sports ball, and everything's on credit. We're all in debt to everything. Our jobs suck, and we're always tired and irritated. And nothing seems healthy. Everything just seems to be going down this darker path. And anybody who can't see that, I can't wrap my head around them. So I was wondering if you had if you had ever connected these dots where maybe everything kind of fits all in this one big amazing package where, days of yore, we were living in coliseums. Now we live in boxes. And this has something to do with,
that was a big part. Yeah, that was a big part of the of exposing the expositions of that book from 3 years ago, is that I got the sense after digging into it for a long time was that we were probably watching, and I used the word before anybody started using it in the last 3 years, was coming after a reset, because that was a word that was throwing around the alternative community at the time, that there were these periods where things were in a sense wiped out and restarted again. And it seemed like to me that's what happened in this period somewhere during the 1800s-ish, and that these fairs became whatever people want to believe, whether they were really built, whether they were ancient buildings, whatever, but they were like the marker point of starting our world, that the world we've known, that we grew up living, was in a sense manufactured, not just from, like the buildings are the least important part of the story. Actually, it's what was going on at the fairs, what was being presented, what is the message that was going out, what was being taught, and all of that. If you look at anything we have today, schooling, law, government, commerce, police structures, the way the fire department works, the way anything, all the sports we play, everything, they were all in some way created 1860 to 1910. Almost all the foundations were there. They try to claim there's an older history. Oh, and then it was built on this from Rome, built on this from Greece. But really, when you get down to it, say, but when did it actually get formed, like in our world? Yeah, it was 1887. Oh, okay. So it was literally the whole structure of everything was built in like a 30 or 40-year time while the fairs were going on. So I think the fairs were like before you had movies, before you had television, before you had open propaganda machines, you had this place. Because remember, the fairs were all over the world. There was probably 500 of them in the course of 30 or 40 years, all looking the same, all with the same message, all doing the same thing. That's a really good way to indoctrinate a worldwide population into a particular kind of thinking, particularly if they've just either come out of a crisis, come out of a total disaster, or been manufactured. I don't know. I've heard there's some really weird stories out there that I can't necessarily throw completely in the garbage, right? These Cabbage Patch Kids and a whole bunch of stuff I've heard about.
Yeah, I heard about that on one of your shows. You would talk about that. It's like, that's the weirdest thing I have ever heard. Like, what are you?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
So who knows? But it just seems like that was indicating it's the changeover. And that's why it's important. It's important because we're in one now, right? Mm. It's happening now. Whatever these fairs were coming out of, we're in that same period. So understanding what happened then and what the new world was being created gives us a better clue of where we actually are and what's going on. So that's why, to me, it's not really important to know, oh, did we lose an ancient civilization? That's low on the importance scale. It's what's happening right now. What is it we're not seeing? And where is this really probably headed, so that we make the decisions that are right for us right now? Because there's a big opportunity now. These things aren't happening by accident, right? These things are happening at a particular time frame in the big sky clock of the world that it's designed, I think, to block a doorway that's open. There's a big doorway to knowledge and truth and totality. It's right there. And if people want to move in that direction, I think what would normally take 5 or 10 years of work might take you 5 weeks or 5 months or whatever. You've got an unbelievable opportunity of depth and speed, but you have to really want to do it, and you have to put your time and your effort in, but it's going to be rewarded greater than it's ever been rewarded. That's at least how I feel about it. I can't prove that, but everything from my research seems to indicate we're at this point where we have a great opportunity, not as humans, not as a group, individually. Each individual person has a great possibility, and it's up to each person to take their own journey now wherever they want to take it, if you want to.
Right on. Awesome.
Right on. Well, I'd say, and I'm going to try this, and if it doesn't work, I'll edit it out. But I got one more question for you, and it's actually from my 6-year-old son.
Okay.
And I'll see if this plays right on my phone, because I can't get it to run through Zoom. Again, I'll edit all.
I'll let you know how it sounds.
Yeah, you can let me know how it sounds.
Yeah.
These are the kind of questions he comes up with. Ask my brother. This kid is deep.
This kid's a trip.
He's a deep kid. For 6, he comes up with some wild stuff. So let's see if this works.
A question that's really, really hard. Why does everything exist?
Did you hear that?
Yeah,
He said, why does everything
exist?
Yeah, he says, I have a really hard question to answer. Really, really hard. Why does everything exist? Yeah, he asked me that. I was like, you got to let me record that. And ask it one more time. And he asked, I'll tell you, my son is, I was like, I've got to put that on Howdie Mickoski's show. Maybe he has the answer to why everything exists. But no, he has
not necessarily, because that might be his core question. Each one of us has a core question in our being that is the thing that would take us to this totality, right? To the self. It's different for everybody. That's what he might be asking. That's, if he tries to ask, who am I, or what is God, or what happens after I die, he won't go the right place. But for him, that might be his question. Why does everything exist?
Right. Yeah.
And
I believe it. And it's some of the weirdest. I mean, there was a time when he was like genuinely seemed distraught about it. And he was like, why don't I feel real? Like really upset about it. He's like, I don't feel real. Why don't I feel real? And
yeah, that's strange. Your 6-year-old comes up with a question like that.
He trips me out sometimes with the things he says, and I'm like learning about stuff that what you're talking about. I'm looking at what other people are talking about, and he's saying stuff like this, and I'm like, reality's breaking down around me in every way. Even my son is saying stuff that I'm like, maybe he's on to something, And it's been a really wild ride the last few years.
I would use that as a possible interesting resource. And when he says something like that, my response would be, why do you think it does?
Yeah.
If just first, because younger children are still tapped into outside of this realm, and as they get older, they get sucked in here deeper and deeper. So who knows how much he's still got access to there. That's why it can be good to throw the question back. It's like, well, what do you think? What do you feel about it? Or, I mean, when he says like, I don't feel real, say, well, do you think there's a place where there is real? Just see what he says.
That's a good question.
You might get a surprising answer by throwing the question, the old psychological game, right? Throw the question back to the patient and see what they respond.
Right. That's pretty good. Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. So, but yeah, I just wanted to share that with you because I was like, I've got to get this in at some point, because I thought that would be pertinent to a lot of the work that you do. And if my 6-year-old is living in the most insane part in our history and asking these questions, then maybe he's going to look at us as a bunch of bumbling idiots when he's our age, so well, howdy, Mr. Mickoski, not Mickoski. There's no W in there. It's Mickoski. I really can't thank you enough for being on our show. Us starting this podcast is primarily us to have opportunities like this to be able to talk to some real thinkers and real people that are really trying to figure things out or in this realm we're living in. And I put you pretty close. I put you up in the top of the list of all kinds of people that we've been wanting to talk to. We're just trying to figure it out. And I hope that us being able to talk to people like you, it will get out there and other people start trying to figure it out too. And maybe together we'll get a clue by the time my son is my age, and he'll have an answer to why does everything exist.
There's the point of why I did this was I figured I felt I had a piece of information, a piece of the puzzle, but I know it's just a piece. I don't have the whole jigsaw puzzle. I don't know it all. And so I wrote the book and the other books and things I've done to share that with others with the hope that they will put it together with their pieces of the puzzle and bring it back and share the next section and the next section and the next section. And yeah, that maybe together as a group we can figure it all out. It's daunting all by yourself, but if we share the journey a little bit for some of the way, that can be a bit of a help. So that was the idea of doing all this. Yeah.
Well, I know we appreciate it. I can't wait for book 2 to come out. Put me on the pre-sale list. Like I said, I've already read it several times, and I've been jonesing for the next one. So let me know as soon as possible, and I hope we can have you on again when the second book comes out, and we can maybe hash out some of these ideas and edit some of the things that we talked about today and said that was that was stupid. We thought that stuff, during book 1. Book 2's out. We got new information.
That's a big part of the journey. If you don't look at where you were 10 years ago and think, boy, a lot of that stuff I believe now is pretty stupid, you haven't really grown. You haven't really gone far.
Right.
That's one of the concerns I had long ago when I started digging into spiritual topics. You would pick up these have like 10 or 15 books, and it didn't matter which book you picked up. It's exactly the same thing over the course of like 20 years. So like the person never grew. They just wrote one thing and then they just keep repeating it in different ways. And, like my Egypt book, I got to the point where I agree with like almost none of it. And I'm almost like, I think I've got to actually pull it off the sales list because it's from almost 20 years ago. I'm not thinking anything like that anymore. I'd almost have to rewrite it if I was going to put it out. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it means we're thinking and growing and changing and realizing that we don't have to keep our belief patterns till next week or next year or anything else. They can change as we find new information. Just like everything in Exit the Cave too, whenever that comes out in a year or two or whatever. Yeah, it might be completely different. I might say, the first book I wrote, piece of crap. I don't know. Yeah. We'll see.
Well, I mean, I know my brother and I can attest to that because if you ask us 10 years ago what we thought, that whole part of my life feels like a distant dream. I mean, it really does. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of stuff in my past. Like if I looked at what I thought and believed today versus what I did 10 years ago, it's so opposite ends of the spectrum that I can't even. It does like my son says. It doesn't feel real. Doesn't feel real. Yeah. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And so that's why like I said, we're ecstatic to have you on here. Like I said, I know my brother. Me and my brother were just super glad you came on our show and was able to talk about this stuff. And I really hope to have you on book 2.
Thanks a lot. Sure. And for those who want to go find it, if you're interested, obviously you can start on a place like, if you're looking at the books, place like Amazon will have all the books listed and you can, don't have to buy them from there if you want the books, but there's lots of other places you can get them from. And if you go to my website, which is the terribly named Egyptian-wisdom-revealed.com. You can also buy a PDF file copy of the book because I know finances are challenging and other people just don't want a hardcover book. They just want to read it on their screen. So you can get it in a much cheaper version there. And the other books are there. Right. Howdie Mickoski Talks is the YouTube channel, which is still there for now, amazingly. And that's the story, I guess.
And I'll just say one more thing. Because we're so new at podcasting, I'm really bad about telling people where they can find you. So since you just laid it all out, if anybody's interested, I already have it it will already be on the website because I already have it on there. Everything he just told you, if you go on our website to this episode, I've got link to the book. I got a link to his website. I got a link to his interviews page. I got a link to his YouTube page. I got a link to where you can buy his book on Amazon, and you can listen to this episode. So if you don't want to remember everything he just said, go to our website. Links are all going to be in there too. So that's where you can find him, and go back and look at more of his stuff, because everything we talked about is just scratching the surface. I promise you won't waste your time. So again,
and our website is TruTheaterRadio.com.
Yeah, I can't even tell us people our own website. I'm too busy talking about conversation. I'm trying to run a freaking podcast here. Shit. TruTheaterRadio.com, episode 5. Howdie Mickoski. Check out the
Howdie Mickoski, yeah.
Without a W. It's Cosby.
Without a W, it's Mickoski.
All right.
Don't type a W.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. We'll talk to everybody later.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, my eyes. Oh, it's so bright.
Look, it's another one. Sir, are you okay? What is your name?
Wait a minute. Who are you? Where am I?
My name is Agent Glaucon. This is Agent Bumsted.
This is the real world. Thank God you made it out.
But I thought my sentence was to be in there.
You were, but we had no idea Demi would go rogue and keep people in there for years. It was to be days, a week at the most. Every time we sent someone in there to retrieve the others, they don't come back out.
I've seen others leave, but they always come back as if nothing's happened.
But they, John, were not you. We sent in others, but if we were to have a real shot at success, it was going to have to be you.
Me? What's so special about me?
They were not as intelligent or strong as you are. You have a very important mission. You must go back.
I'm out in the real world, and I've all but forgotten it.
You are the only hope the others have. Do you really want to leave them in there to rot? Think of Lisa.
How do you know about Lisa?
We know everyone in there. We also know she was assigned to sit next to you and has been for the last 2 years.
Lisa. Okay, I'll go back. And if the opportunity arises, I'm taking that Demi out while I'm at it.
Ah, yes! I knew we could count on you. You are going to be a hero and a great service to your country and the people of the world.
Thank me when I get back.
God be with you.
Okay, whatever you do, don't get caught up in the movie. Just focus on getting Lisa out of there.
Welcome back, sir. Would you like a popcorn refill before you return to our feature film?
Popcorn, right. I can't forget the popcorn, or Lisa probably won't even listen to what I have to say. 1 extra large refill, please.
There you are. Enjoy the film.
Yeah, thanks. Now to get Lisa. Oh man, that's good. Lisa! Lisa! I've seen it! I've been outside. I've seen the real world.
Did you bring more popcorn?
Yes, here.
Oh, good.
Did you hear me? I've been to the real world.
It's hilarious. Every time. Those pieces of shit come out and thinking they're finally out. I love legal loopholes.
It's not a prison when they choose to go back.
Lisa, listen to me. This is all a trap. We aren't supposed to be in here.
But this is the best part.
What? Oh, yeah. This is my favorite part. No, we have to go.
Demi, Reestablish viewer number 458766291.
Viewer number 45,876,291 re-establishment confirmed.
Come sit down. We've missed you. Free popcorn.
They do have the best popcorn.
The best.
Maybe I'll just watch till the end.
Another dissenter kept from the general public. The greater good can live on another day.
I know that Demi created this perfect film, but how is it so enticing? I mean, you've seen it, right? Why didn't you get sucked in?
Perfect film, please. That pile of circuits couldn't write a Christmas play for a local elementary school. The movie is awful.
So why is it so effective?
The movie is just the activator, nothing more.
Activator for what?
Let me put it to you this way. If and when we send you in there, do not eat the popcorn.
Yeah, what a nightmare.
Maybe I'll just watch one more time. One more time. Just one more time. One more time. One more time.
Doc, do you remember what you said once in psychology class? About the phenomena of dreams foreshadowing future events?
Yes. But to healthy-minded people, a dream is just a dream.
Doc, I'd like to go home today.
Home? Why, Paul, what's the matter?
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Delicious things to eat. The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Popcorn Flick was written and edited by Jonah Earl. Featured in the cast were Jonah Earl as John, Becca Earl as Lisa, Matt T. as Howard, Joshua Earl as Agent Glaucon, Rick Hall as Agent Bumsted, Janet Fox and her husband as audience members. This has been a TruTheater Radio production, copyright 2023, TruTheater Radio.
Let's all